going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of After the Whistle. This is episode 56, and you know what day it is? It is Thursday. That means it is time to make some predictions. But first, always have to plug the socials. It's what my social media manager, aka my smoking hot wife, Ashley, tells me all the time. I've got to make sure I mention my social media channels more, otherwise you're not going to be able to find me, and other people will not be able to find me. So here we go. Shows available on YouTube, shows available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music. Also, be sure, if you're listening to this show on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or YouTube, be sure to take literally like 2 to 3 seconds out of your day. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, hit that follow button. If you're on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, pretty sure there's a subscribe, follow button. They're equivalent of it anyway. Be sure that you hit that button so that you get updates every time a new episode of the show drops. If you are on Instagram, follow me at ATWCFB. If you are on Facebook, it's also the same handle on Facebook as well. I post things time to time, funny memes, things like that. Love to talk a lot of crap about certain teams. You get the point. If you follow me, you'll eventually see it. Jumping right into a few storylines that have kind of reared their ugly head over the last couple days. If you follow college football news like I do, you've probably seen some things about this. But I have a bone to pick with the College Football Playoff Committee. And last week, I think I mentioned it on the show as well, about last week's edition of the rankings. There were some things that I couldn't quite wrap my head around. I wouldn't call it a double standard. I wouldn't call it I can't think of the terminology that I'm trying to use there, but I wouldn't say double standard. But when we have a committee that says the results on the field matter, head-to-heads matter, I made the comment last week, then if that matters, then why are we ranking Notre Dame ahead of Miami? And not just ranking Notre Dame ahead of Miami by 1 or 2 spots. We're ranking Notre Dame 6 spots ahead of the Miami Hurricanes, a team that beat Notre Dame. So at that point, that's kind of a thing to me where you can say the results on the field matter and head-to-heads matter, but they don't. Because we literally have the proof right there. It's like my grandmother says, proof's in the pudding. There we go. Like, the proof is in the pudding. The pudding is the football game that those two teams played on the field. One team won, the other team lost, and we're putting Notre Dame up there ahead of them. Another term that I can't stand to hear the panelists on ESPN or whatever, whether it be Heather Dinich, Greg McElroy, probably the two most insufferable people on television when it comes to sports media right now. Like, you ever hear somebody talk and it's like nails on a chalkboard? That's those two. Like, just nails on a chalkboard every time they talk about college football. Heather Dinich, I mean, what has she done for the game to justify us valuing her opinion? Don't understand it. I understand the woman knows her stuff. She knows ball. She knows the numbers, whatever you want to call it. But just sometimes she says some things that are just way out of left field. Greg McElroy, only claim to fame was he played quarterback for an Alabama team that won a national title that had generational athletes all around him. Literally had like 4 or 5 future Hall of Famers on that offense. But all of a sudden we have to take his opinion and put it up here above everybody else's like we care. I have to get, just those two people. I want to mute my television. Anybody else, just click the button. Like, done. Don't want to hear them. Just read the subtitles. Greg McElroy, stop using the term quality loss. Okay? Throw that out, please. Like, take it, ball it up, throw it in the trash. But we hear panelists say quality loss. There's not, call me crazy. Maybe I'm too competitive for the way the sport is nowadays. Maybe I'm too competitive in nature for 2025. I don't know. 2025 college football is a lot different than college football in 2005, 20 years ago. But call me crazy. Maybe I'm just competitive. I want to win every football game. Like, quality loss. There's no such thing. A loss is a loss. But we can't in the same breath say that Notre Dame has a quality loss to a ranked Texas A&M and a ranked Miami. Quality losses. We can in the same breath say that Notre Dame has a quality loss to Miami, and yet we rank Miami so far back. Obviously, it's not that much of a quality loss if the committee's not respecting Miami as a football team and ranking them where they're at, right? So we've got to understand some things here. We've got to work some kinks out, obviously, because not only do I have an issue with that, and we'll go over the updated top 25 here in just a second, but not only do I have an issue with that from last week, this week we have a whole new thing, and that is the fact that at some point, beating ranked teams should matter, right? That's a resume builder. Texas Tech in Lubbock this past weekend beat the brakes off of another ranked opponent. So we rewarded them. They got a little bump, right? Therefore, why didn't we give Texas A&M the same thing, the same credit? Texas A&M beats a Missouri team like a drum, and Indiana, the presumed second-ranked team in the country, has to rely on a freakish catch from Omar Cooper at the last second, pretty much just a prayer, throw it up on a prayer type throw from Mendoza to the back of the end zone. Cooper with an incredible catch, incredible body control, balance, you name it, able to get a foot down. And it takes that for Indiana to beat a winless in-conference Penn State team that doesn't even have a head coach. But we keep Texas A&M at 3 and Indiana at 2. Why? I mean, every year there's going to be things that we can complain about. Every year there's going to be, certain things that don't quite add up, that one thing looks like this, another thing looks like that. I understand that. There's always going to be talking points around it. But to me, that's two things right there that I just cannot, I have almost worn a hole in the back of my head over the last 2 weeks, scratching my head trying to figure out what is the justification, what is the way of thinking here for this committee in those two instances. And there's probably more, but think about it this way. If Notre Dame's got 2 losses, they're the 9th ranked team in the country. Let's just say that's, we look at other teams that have 2 losses. We look at Michigan, 18th, USC, 17th, Miami, 7-2 at 15th. When we look at these other teams, are we falling victim? This is a question to the committee. Are we falling victim to the logo? I think we are. And Greg McElroy, spare me with the argument of trajectory. I can't stand that argument. Just like I said last week, I can't stand the trajectory argument because it's almost like we don't even play the game, right? Of all people, Greg McElroy should understand that. The guys on the panel, and I don't mean to single Greg McElroy out when I say this because there's others on that panel too that say things like this. A team's trajectory should not matter. I don't give a rat's you-know-what. If Miami is on a downward trajectory and Notre Dame's on an upward trajectory, obviously the results on the field will prove that with each passing game. The results on the field will show that. Miami will lose again. Once Miami gets that 3rd loss, yeah, rank Notre Dame ahead of them, no problem. But I can't stand the trajectory argument. It's subjective, it's hypothetical, and if you know me, if you know anything about me in college football, I don't do hypothetical arguments. I don't do it. Give me facts, give me reason, and if you can't, there's the door, twist the handle, walk your way through it, and don't let it hit you on the rear on the way out. Because I'm not doing the hypothetical arguments in college football. Give me facts, give me reason. The facts is Miami beat Notre Dame on the field. They're ranked way past them. A&M bludgeoned a ranked opponent. They're third, Indiana second. Why? Laziness and name recognition. That's why you get those two results from this committee, and that's all I'll say about it. But let's go over this week's edition of the top 25. Starting at 25, we have Cincinnati. 24, we have USF. Tennessee at 23. Pitt at 22. Iowa 21. Louisville 20. Virginia 19. Michigan 18. USC 17. Georgia Tech 16. Miami 15th. Vanderbilt 14. Utah 13. BYU 12. Oklahoma 11. Texas 10. Notre Dame 9. Oregon 8. Ole Miss 7. Texas Tech at 6. Top 5 remains unchanged. Georgia, Bama, A&M, Indiana, Ohio State. So that's this week's edition of the top 25. Not a whole lot of movement. Obviously, Texas Tech gets their little jump. Like I said, they jumped 2 spots to number 6. And to me, rightfully so. That's how we reward a team that just smothers a ranked opponent. That's how we reward it. But whose win was more impressive? Texas Tech playing at home, beating a BYU team that we really were kind of skeptical about. Some people were skeptical about. Or A&M going on the road to Columbia, Missouri, and just taking care of business. Whose win's more impressive? Only one team moved. I digress. Okay, so that's the new rankings. Every week we'll get a new one. I'll get something else to complain about from here on out. Every week I'll have something else to complain about, for lack of a better term there. So let's talk about a couple things, a couple more talking points, then we'll get into some predictions. I only have 5 games this week that I want to go over. But first thing, let's talk about the nightmare scenario. And let's talk about how terrible the ACC is. And now there is a doomsday scenario here. There is a crazy scenario that we could see play out where the ACC does not get a single team in the college football playoff. And I can hear you now, all the ball knowers out there. But Colby, if they win the ACC, they get an automatic bid. Nope, they don't. The automatic bids are reserved for the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Or 4, excuse me. And then you have the group of 5 spot, obviously. There is a scenario out there where we do not see an ACC opponent in the playoff. Now you can ask me, Colby, do you think that's going to happen? No, I really don't. I'm pretty positive, given what we've seen so far. You've got Georgia Tech and Miami at the 16 and the 15 spot. Miami being your highest ranked ACC team. Miami's got the chance here to be, some chips got to fall their way. They have 2 conference losses, and when we look at the standings of the ACC, it is bonkers. You got Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pitt, SMU, and Duke, all with 1 conference loss. Now, Georgia Tech being the one team that's kind of in the driver's seat right now with 1 conference loss and ranked 16th. But it's still, a lot can happen. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of things out there that could twist this and just blow up. It could blow up in the ACC's face here pretty quick, because this is a conference that all year they've been eating their own. They've just been, everybody's been ruining everybody's seasons. You had Georgia Tech with the loss to NC State. We've seen close games for Georgia Tech, mainly against Wake Forest. This is not a conference, in my opinion, that is just got a dominant football team. I mean, you got a Virginia team that managed to score 9 points against Wake Forest last week. I mean, a Virginia that was kind of in the driver's seat up until that last week. Just a pathetic showing for Virginia against Wake Forest. So we see it, and now it's starting to become this. It's starting to become this nightmare scenario where you have a team that could win out, a team that has 3 ACC games left on their schedule, like Duke. Duke currently sitting with 4 losses. Lost to Illinois, lost to Tulane, lost to Georgia Tech, and lost to UConn. Think about that for a second. There's some things that could happen to where the Duke team that lost to Tulane, lost to UConn, could go to the ACC championship. So, wild scenarios. There's so many different possibilities in that conference. I could sit here for an hour and go through them. I'll let you use your own imagination and draw up whatever scenario you're thinking. But it's going to be, it's wild. The ACC is the wild, wild west this year. It's crazy. Like, I don't even know who's going to win the conference at this point. Like, if you made me pick a team, I don't even know that I would want to do it. So, moving into our third piece of business before we go into the predictions. Okay, if you follow college football, if you follow the news, if you follow everything else, you've noticed of all the teams that have gotten rid of their head coach. You know, you've got the Auburns, you've got the Arkansas, you've got Florida, you got all these teams that gotten rid of their head coach. There's most of these schools have already began the coaching search for, you know, Auburn. It's been reported that John Summerall from Tulane is kind of the front runner for that coaching position, although not been confirmed, but it's being reported. You know, it's a lot of this stuff during the middle of the college football season is, you know, he said, she said, they said, whatever. And we don't know what's true until pen meets paper, right? But it's being reported right now. And I can't in clear conscience say that I have that on good authority because I don't have an inside source or I don't have anything like that. But what I can tell you is John Summerall looks to be the betting favorite and the front runner for the Auburn job. What you have noticed, the LSU coaching search has been eerily quiet over the last couple weeks. You know, at first, they fire Brian Kelly. And then off the jump, it's, man, LSU's going to get Lane Kiffin. LSU's going to get Lane Kiffin. And then we just heard it for like a week. We heard about how that's who this school was going to go after. They fire their athletic director, clearing house, essentially. Well, things have taken a very drastic turn over the last few days. So apparently, you know, LSU fires Brian Kelly. He's owed like a $53 million buyout. LSU is essentially refusing to pay the buyout and trying to terminate Kelly with cause. So trying to cheat him out of money. And here's the thing about this. Here's my perspective and here's where I'll stand on this. Okay. LSU signed a contract to pay Brian Kelly his salary to pay a buyout in the event of his firing. You signed a contract. Now you're trying to weasel your way out of it because, I really don't know why. Really don't know if now people are coming back and saying, you know, we don't need to spend that kind of money or what. I have no idea the underlying issues of this other than the fact that they're just trying to get out of paying it. That's it. I don't think there's a specific reason, or I don't think there's anything that you can put out there that's like, that's why they're doing what they're doing. What I can say is you signed a contract to pay the guy, you pay the guy. Because this is a bad look. I was one on record a couple weeks ago where I said that Lane Kiffin, to me, the LSU head coaching job was his to say no to, his to lose, whatever. that's who LSU was going to go after. And if LSU wanted Lane Kiffin, they were going to get Lane Kiffin. Well, now, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that Florida has not taken the lead in this Lane Kiffin sweepstakes because of all the extracurricular activities that have been going on around this football program over the last couple weeks. You had the governor of the state of Louisiana step in and basically get into a pissing contest with the athletic director saying he's not going to pick the next head coach. I know what's best for the LSU football program, blah, 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 blah. Made the whole thing political. And now you have the school trying to refuse to pay your predecessor. If you're Lane Kiffin, this is the way you look at it. The school's refusing to pay your predecessor and trying to fire him with cause. What cause? Do they have a reason? Has it been listed? I haven't seen anything. I don't think y'all have either. I don't think anybody has. We haven't seen anything on this whole situation where LSU is like, we're firing Brian Kelly because he did this. He was texting, certain females, members of a certain group with a university cell phone. Y'all know who I'm talking about. But he wasn't doing that. So now it just looks like LSU's trying to weasel their way out of paying the man what you owe him. And yes, you do owe him. You signed a contract and said, we're going to pay you, Mr. Kelly. He signed on one line, representative of Louisiana State University, signed on the other line. You pay the man. This is a bad look. This could drive coaching prospects off. It really could. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't think that Lane Kiffin is watching every second of what is unfolding in Baton Rouge, and it's not really scaring him away from that job. Because you think now when you compare apples to, it's not so much apples to oranges anymore. Yeah, sure, LSU's got the resources. LSU's got the money. LSU's got this. They have the leg up on Ole Miss in those categories. But Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's treated well at Ole Miss. He's able to do whatever he wants, say whatever he wants. He's got the NIL budget. He gets the players. He wins. He doesn't have to deal with the governor of Mississippi trying to run the program for him. Just a bad look. Just a bad look in general for LSU. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if, season about a month from now, whatever, comes out, Lane Kiffin's going to Gainesville, going to Florida. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest if this was the point where Lane Kiffin is standing at the crossroads and you got Florida to the right and you got LSU to the left. And you sit there and you think about all the extracurricular just BS that's been going on in Baton Rouge over the last few weeks. And you'd be crazy to think that he's not going to take that into account. And I would think if he chose to go right on that crossroads and go to Gainesville, I would think this was the turning point, so to speak, for Lane Kiffin. I think that's what we're going to see. I don't think now, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I said it on this show. Lane Kiffin, it was his job. LSU was his job to lose. Now it's not. I think as of right now, this very day, Wednesday, November 13th, or no, not Wednesday, excuse me, Thursday, November 13th, I think Lane Kiffin's going to Florida. If he goes anywhere, I think he's going to Florida. I don't think he's either going to stay at Ole Miss or he's going to go to Florida. I don't see him going to LSU with all of this going on. It's a nightmare. So, all right. So the reason you all tune in for predictions. You don't tune in to hear me ramble about subjects like that, or maybe you do. I don't know. But either way, you tune in for the predictions. So we're going to start things off at a game that I feel like could get kind of maybe it has a little bit of a intrigue, surrounding it. Maybe, I don't know. But Notre Dame playing Pittsburgh on the road, noon kick. A Pittsburgh team that, shockingly, pretty decent against the run. Third-ranked rush defense in the country there in Pittsburgh. What does Notre Dame like to do? Jeremiah Love likes to run the football. The Notre Dame, the last time we saw them against Navy, a 49-10 win, just ran the football decently well, but hard to gauge this Notre Dame team, because like I said, this Notre Dame team, for me, are they worthy of the top 10 ranking? I don't know. Really hard to say. Of their 7 wins that they have, 3 have come against the last place teams in the ACC, Big Ten, and SEC. Boston College, Purdue, Arkansas. So those 3 teams, 0-18 in league play, 5-24 overall. So 2 of their 5 wins remaining came against an FBS team. So when we look at the strength of schedule here for Notre Dame, we look at their losses. We got it on paper. A&M, we got Miami. Don't really know what to think about this team. Don't get me wrong, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, I like C.J. Carr. I like the athletes that Notre Dame has. They definitely have the horses to play good football. The problem is you're not backing it up with results on the field. That's where I have the issue. If Notre Dame's sitting here at 8-1, my perspective is a little bit different. If Notre Dame would have taken care of business against Miami, my perspective would be a little bit different here. A 1-point loss to the second-ranked team in the country, and we have Notre Dame at 7th, 8th, 9th. Okay, justified, fine. But to have the 2 losses and the strength of schedule that they have, which isn't a very strong schedule, just call me crazy, call me whatever you want, a little bit skeptical that this team is where they're at. So, starting the season 0-2, sure, they've won 7 straight. Great. But like I said earlier, trajectory doesn't matter to me. I do not care. It's hypothetical. What we can say, though, based on what we're looking at here on the notes and on the stats, I think Pitt could give Notre Dame a little bit of a test, seeing as how Pitt has the defense potentially to give Notre Dame's run game fits. A run game that is ranked top, 26 in the country, almost top 25 in the country for Notre Dame. 194 yards a game for that outfit there. But 15th ranked offense, 9th in scoring for Notre Dame. So Pittsburgh, giving up on average 21 points a game. The issue there is, Notre Dame looks like they can kind of score on anybody. I mean, they've got, in my opinion, the best running back in college football in Jeremiah Love. The game, to me, is going to be won in a couple key areas here. And this has been an issue for Pittsburgh all year, in the little amount that I've watched them, because I will admit that I'm not one to sit here and try to, kid my listeners into thinking that I watch every single team I talk about, every single snap of every team I talk about. It's not possible. I don't have 20 television screens. So a lot of what I get comes off of the sheet of paper that I take notes on. A lot of it comes off of stat lines. A lot of it comes off analytics and everything like that. But the area of concern for me with Pittsburgh is Pitt ranks 129th in the country in penalty yards. They give a lot of yards away, and also not so great in the turnover category either, with a -1 turnover margin, 79th in the country. To contrast that with Notre Dame, Notre Dame's +10 in that metric. That's good for 8th in the country. Notre Dame takes the ball away, and they don't give the ball away. Pittsburgh gives it away more than they take it. So, to me, that's one area where we could see a difference, we could see a difference made in this football game. And, a lot of games come down to that, but a lot of games come down to like penalties and turnovers. You don't really like to say games going to come down to penalties and turnovers, but when you have a team that's penalized as much as Pittsburgh, it could come down to that. An untimely penalty could extend a Notre Dame drive. Maybe once or twice that could happen. Before you know it, those 2 drives that you maybe could have got off the field on 3rd down, you gave them free yardage, they get a 1st down, they go on to score a touchdown. That's 14 points if you do it twice. Just saying. A lot of games come down to this, and a lot of people don't pay attention to these metrics. That's a big one. Out of 136 teams, you're 129th in penalty yards a game. Penalties you commit. That's free yardage. in order for Pitt to win this football game, you're going to have to make Notre Dame earn every single yard that they get on offense. You're going to have to make them earn every single yard they rush for, every single yard they throw for. No freebies. You can't turn the ball over. You got to get off the field on third down. And you have to be disciplined. Can't commit penalties. Unfortunately for Pittsburgh, I do not think that they're able to do this. You know, I don't care how good Raphael Williams is. Don't care, let's just put that aside for a second. Let's put the athletes aside for a second. Let's look at the numbers. You know, I don't really see Pittsburgh winning this game. However, I think it could be a little bit of a test for Notre Dame. Now, would the what people like to call me Notre Dame hater in me, would I love to watch Notre Dame get beat by Pittsburgh? Absolutely. I don't care where you're listening from. You'd probably hear me celebrating it from wherever you're at. Because I just think, Notre Dame gets the benefit of the doubt due to the name recognition and the brand recognition more than anything. So yeah, sure. Would I enjoy seeing Notre Dame get beat by Pittsburgh? Absolutely. I don't think it's going to happen though. Notre Dame in this football game, I just think they're a disciplined football team. Marcus Freeman prides himself on that, obviously. So disciplined football team. Notre Dame favored by 12.5 points in this spot. I don't like Notre Dame to cover. I like them to win, but I don't like them to cover in this spot. And so I've got Notre Dame winning this football game 31-23 over the Pitt Panthers is my official prediction on this one. I just don't see anything from watching a little bit of Pitt, looking at the numbers, anything like that. I just don't see them being able to get it done. I just don't. I mean, I would love, like I said, love to see it, but don't think it's going to happen. All right, what was that conference that I talked about a few minutes ago that was just absolutely topsy-turvy and we just can't quite figure out what's going on? The almighty ACC. We've got a killer matchup. Virginia at Duke. And this is this is one of those things. Virginia at Duke. We wouldn't have thought a 8-2 versus 5-4 game would be as crucial as it is in a conference race. But it is. When we look at, like I said, when we look at the conference standings for the ACC and we look at these two teams and we say Virginia's 5-1 in conference, Duke's 4-1 in conference. These two teams are literally playing for a spot in the ACC championship game. This is kind of an ACC championship game eliminator game, if you will. An 8-2 team, I don't think I can stress that enough. An 8-2 team is going on the road and playing a 5-4 team, and it's a conference championship elimination game, essentially. Bonkers. Crazy. ACC's just not anywhere near what we thought it would be this year. I mean, I was really expecting big things from Florida State, Clemson, Miami. I thought those three teams. And I was just talking to a buddy of mine yesterday, and I said, if you would have told me after week 3, like if you would have said, hey man, I'm from the future. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, not a single one of them is going to make it to Charlotte for the ACC championship game. I would have laughed in your face. I'd have been like, clearly you're not from the future, buddy. Here we are. It looks like that's the way we're headed. And it looks like, I mean, obviously Clemson and Florida State aren't going to be there. Miami could maybe. Not going to happen. They're kind of outside looking in here. I don't even know if they'd be looking in. I think they're just outside. Have to do a dive into that and see and make sure. I don't even know if it's mathematically possible for Miami to get there. I don't know. Maybe it is. That's something I should have probably researched before I hit record on the show today. But either way, Virginia going on the road playing Duke. Duke's offense, they can score, 35 points a game. They can score with about the best of them. Defensively, just doesn't quite even out. Virginia to me has a little bit of an upper hand in this scenario due to the fact that I trust Virginia's defense a little bit better. They're not setting the woods on fire by any stretch of the imagination, but, they're top 40 in scoring in the country. You got a team that's, near top 30 in rush defense. So definitely better than Duke's metrics when you look at a team that's ranked 106th in yards given up a game on defense. It's been Duke's issue all year. I think Manny Diaz is the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils. You'd think they have a little bit better defense than they do, being a defensive guy, but that is not the case. Darian Mensah, though, great athlete for Duke. That's the difference maker in this football game. Guys like Cooper Barkate, Nate Shepard, Darian Mensah, these are the guys for Duke that really are able to produce for this offense. This is kind of these three guys, these big three guys that this offense clicks around. Is Barkate, Shepard, and Mensah. With Barkate, 824 yards on 50 catches this year. Shepard running the football, averaging about 6.5 yards a carry. And then, obviously, everybody that follows college football knows Darian Mensah from being at Tulane last year. Darian Mensah, very dynamic athlete, very fun to watch play the game. However, this Virginia team is more of a physical football team. We watched this Virginia team upset Florida State here earlier in the season. Guy like Chandler Morris, who's just a never-say-die type kid, just going to get after it. He plays physical. Jamari Taylor running the football as well. Trail Harris catching the football on the outside for Virginia Tech. The athletes aren't exactly mismatched as you would think. When you hear the names like Darian Mensah, you would think, well, Darian Mensah is just so much better than, Chandler Morris. Or he's so much, the athletes favor Duke. They really don't. The numbers don't favor Duke either. And this is also a Duke team that lost to UConn last Saturday. And Mensah, the issue with him is going to be taking care of the football. Just threw 2 picks last weekend against UConn. Can't have that happen again. Duke also another team. Horrible penalty yards. 125th in the country. What was one of the things we just talked about when it comes to Pittsburgh? The fact that they are penalized very heavily. Duke is in the same boat. Virginia, obviously the more disciplined team. Virginia given, 43 penalty yards a game. Duke 68. So the more disciplined team, Virginia, we check that box, right? Virginia 24th in the country with a +5 turnover margin. We check that box. It's better than Duke's. The issue is going to be third downs. Going to come down to converting third downs and extending drives and controlling the clock. Duke's defense, like I said, terrible. 88th, 89th in the country, I believe, in giving up third downs, allowing opponents to convert about 41% of the time in that area. Not good. Because Virginia, what we saw Virginia do to a team like Florida State, what we've seen Virginia do this year is the fact that they are able to extend drives. They run the football just good enough. The running threat of Chandler Morris is just good enough for this team to extend drives and be better on third down than whoever they're playing and their opponent. You look at Virginia's games, the games that they've won, they've been better than their opponent on third down. I think that's the metric we need to focus on here for this football game. Virginia is going to have to be better on third down than Duke. They're going to have to run the football for more yards than Duke. You're going to have to get after Darian Mensah. 3 keys to the game there. Run the football. If you're Virginia, you've got to run the football. You've got to be better on third down. And you have to get pressure on the quarterback of Mensah. Because Mensah, he's the type of guy he can create. He's the type of guy kind of like a Taylon Green for Arkansas who can just take a football game over by himself. Just a freak athlete, kind of do-it-all type guy. So you have to get pressure on that quarterback. You have to get pressure on Darian Mensah in order to, push this Duke team into a corner where they have to do something that they're not very comfortable with doing, and that is, being more of making Darian Mensah more of a pocket passer type guy. And don't get me wrong, 4th ranked pass offense in the country. You can't really say we're going to make them beat us throwing the ball because he can beat you throwing the ball. But you have to keep him contained and keep him in the pocket to throw the football. Where he's good when he gets out of the pocket and he's able to keep his eyes downfield and those scramble drill throws. You see a lot of yardage given up from the teams that Duke's playing in that area on those scramble drill throws where he gets outside the pocket and he's pointing downfield, telling the receiver to go this way, and he's directing traffic. That's where a lot of their yards come from. This game's kind of been weird for me because I'm not too... A lot of people are leaning Duke here. A lot of people. I've seen it on certain podcasts I listen to. I've seen it on TV. I've seen Duke. Duke favored by 4.5 points here. I'm going to go kind of against the grain here, and I think Virginia gets this. I think Virginia gets a really good win here. I think Virginia comes out. I think you see a very physical effort from a Virginia team, gets a win, and I like Virginia to win this game. I like them to kind of turn it, I like for this game to be a little bit less high scoring than a lot of the experts think. And I like Virginia to win this football game 30-27. I've seen some predictions of people saying this is going to be a shootout. We're going to see 45-42, whatever. I think 30-27. I think Virginia gets it done over Duke, and Virginia moves to 9-2 and stays in that ACC championship race. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to see a 4-loss team playing for a conference championship. I mean, come on, guys. We got to have a little bit more decency than that, right? Okay, so Iowa going on the road out to Southern Cal to play the USC Trojans. Another big contest in the Big Ten. A effort from Iowa from last week that we saw against Oregon that's the type of game they need to play against USC in order to win. Because USC, if you thought Oregon's offense was explosive, which on paper it's not, but if you thought Oregon's offense was explosive, man, USC's offense, top 10 in almost every category. Second in total offense, 10th in pass yards a game, 7th in scoring. They can put up points in bunches. So what does that tell you right off the bat, right off the rip here? What jumps off the paper at us is Iowa, when you look at their defense, 5th against the pass in the country, 4th in offensive yards allowed. This is going to ride on getting USC off the field on third down, being physical, because Iowa has no business trying to get into a track meet with USC. That is a losing battle. You're going to lose by 30 points if that happens. Can't let that happen. The game has to be played similar to how you played it last week. You have to run the football. You can't abandon the run. Kamari Moulton has got to get after it. Run the football. Take your shots to Sam Phillips when they're available if you're Mark Gronowski. You have to do that. But Kamari Moulton, to me, I've got his name circled here in my notes. That's my key player. If Iowa can get him going early against a USC defense that is giving up about 142 yards a game against the run, they're not as good of a rush defense as Oregon. So if you ran the football, if you're Kamari Moulton, you ran the football 23 times for 87 yards against Oregon, there's no reason for me to think that Moulton doesn't get 25 touches for 100-plus yards in this football game. That's what's got to happen. Moulton has to have a minimum. I would say you need to give him the football at least 25 times in this football game. 100 yards plus. That's what needs to happen. Because what have I said on this show before? When you have a team like Iowa going up against a high-flying offense like USC, what's the best defense for an offense like that? It is an offense that can control the clock. And we've seen Iowa be a team that can control the clock. So that's the key player, Kamari Moulton, run the football. I think this game's a lot more interesting if Iowa can run the football, turn this into a low-scoring affair, make USC's drives count. And what I mean by that is when you've got a team that can hold the football like Iowa can and run the football, and you've got a 60-minute football game, and you've got a team like Iowa who will hold the football for, say, 35, 36 minutes out of 60, that limits your possessions. And when you limit possessions against a team, it makes every possession count. So they have to score points on every possession. So that's where I think Iowa they have to kind of back USC into a corner here, force them to be perfect. That's how you win this football game. You have to force USC into a corner, make them be perfect. The problem with that is USC is very good on third down. 5th in the country in that spot. They converted about 52% of the time on third down. So you're not going to, the old adage of we've got to force them into obvious passing situations. That doesn't matter. This is a Lincoln Riley offense. This is an offense with a guy like Jaden Mayava playing there, Mekhi Lemon catching the football, who's probably going to crack the 1,000-yard mark in this football game. He's currently sitting at 937 for the season. So this is this is the game within the game, contrasting styles. We thought we were seeing that last week with Oregon and Iowa. We got an 18-16 football game. Most of that was due to the weather conditions. I'm not going to say that if they played that game in a controlled environment in a dome that it would be 18-16. I don't think that it would be that way. But it's just like everybody says, it'd be like that sometimes. And that's what happened there. So I like Iowa. I love the toughness. I love Kurt Ferris. I like Kamari Moulton. I like Gronowski. I love this team's toughness. I love the way they play defense. I'm just not ready to pull the trigger on the upset here for Iowa. I've got USC winning this football game. I've got it being a little bit more Iowa-ish, I guess you could say. I've got USC winning this football game 26-23. Yes, I know, but I've seen a lot of people say USC is going to go over 30. I just think that Iowa's going to run the football very effectively. I think that they're going to be able to run the football. There's nothing on paper that tells me that Iowa's not going to have success running the football against this defense. So therefore, I've got it being not a low-scoring game, but kind of that mid-tier scoring range, 26-23 USC over Iowa in that one. All right, so moving on. I know a lot of my listeners, you're from the South. You want to hear Southeastern Conference predictions. Here we go. We got two big ones in the Southeastern Conference this weekend. Oklahoma going on the road to Tuscaloosa, and we have Texas going on the road to Athens. That's what we're going to close the show with this week. First, I want to give a couple shout-outs to some people I promised to give a shout-out to. My little buddy Dan the Man, if you're listening. Always appreciate your football insight. Love talking football with him. If y'all have never met Dan, my best friend Cole's son, if you've never met Dan, I would put him at his age up against anybody. Most people that I know that are my age. Ball knowledge. Dan the Man, he's a ball knower. We give a ball knower shout out here on After the Whistle for Daniel Green. Love you, buddy. All right. So let's go into Oklahoma and Alabama. First, let me get a sip of water because it is, if you live in South Georgia, you understand the way that the weather swings. The weather's very bipolar down here. So it'll be cold one day and then it's warm the next day. And, my allergies and my whatever you want to call it, throat gets dry. I know y'all don't want to hear me coughing when I'm on the show. When I'm on here trying to talk, you don't want to hear me coughing, sniffling, and everything. So get a sip of water real quick. We'll jump into what I think about Oklahoma and Alabama. All right, so John Mateer, Oklahoma Sooners, going on the road to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama. A little bit of a revenge spot here for Alabama because Alabama fans are quick to forget, but most people that follow football are not. Alabama got smacked around by Oklahoma last year in Norman, Oklahoma. Wasn't even close. And I know before you come at me with the ref arguments and the refs screwed you out of a touchdown, it wouldn't have made a difference. You got beat by 3 scores. So pipe down. Okay. Oklahoma comes into this game not a streak, But Oklahoma has looked a lot better over the last couple weeks. I mean, obviously we saw them in the loss against Texas. That's without John Mateer. You know, that's the big outlier there. But Oklahoma, the Oklahoma we saw against Tennessee, really good football team. You know, yes, this team got beat by Ole Miss, but then we saw this team against South Carolina beat South Carolina by 20 points. So this team is capable of playing a really good football game. And when we look at, you know, Oklahoma, could they win? We thought about, you know, Mateer didn't throw but for like $159 against Tennessee, but they still get it done. You know, they're still able to run the football. Xavier Robinson, able to run the football really well. Kind of the emergence of him has really helped this run game for Oklahoma. An Oklahoma run game that struggled early. I mean, they're still 95th in the country, 137 yards a game, so they're not exactly setting the woods on fire here. But it's a run game that struggled early, and now we're seeing that run game improve a little bit. And when we contrast that to Alabama, we got a team that cannot run the football. That, and it's like I mentioned last week, that will be Alabama's Achilles heel at some point. I don't care how good Ty Simpson looks. One-dimensional teams do not win national championships. Balanced football teams do. You don't have balance. Teams you'll run into a team eventually that can defend you. And so that's an area of concern if I'm Alabama, is the fact that when's the last time that we saw, and I should have looked this up so I would have had it for a reference point, but when's the last time we saw an Alabama offense that was ranked 120th in the country in rushing? It's been a while. Now passing, they're 14th. Scoring 39th. So they still have that dynamic offense. A lot of it rides on Ty Simpson. The only two areas that I think, the area that I think this game is going to be played in here, strike the fact that it's at home if you're Alabama. But two things I want to look at. This Oklahoma defense. You know, we talked about them earlier in the year, talked about how good this defense is. They've had some games where they've been kind of, you know, Ole Miss was able to kind of get theirs against this defense. But this defense can really put pressure on the quarterback. So the big question mark for me is, one, Ty Simpson hadn't really been that good throwing the football down the field lately. Look at it if you want, but the deep shots have been there. They've just been overthrown. You know, so they've been thriving on the short throws, the drag routes, the slants, the things like that. It hasn't been a take the lid off type offense. Oklahoma's going to get after the quarterback. To me, the key area and the key group of players that this that this game is going to ride on is the Oklahoma defensive line. That to me is going to be, that's going to be where this game's going to be won and lost. You know, you got like Kip Lewis, Spears Jennings, Omasigo, Bowen, Daniels. Like this defense is really good. A lot of NFL talent on this side, a lot of physicality. I would argue, I don't know if Bama's seen a defense that's going to be as physical as Oklahoma's unit is on Saturday. I'm very interested to see how Alabama responds and how Alabama plays against this defense. Because like I said, Oklahoma's defense giving up 264 yards a game, 7th in the country. 181 pass yards a game, that's 22nd in the country. 82 rush yards a game, that's 4th in the country. Scoring, they give up 14 points a game. So that's a big area for me, is the defensive matchup. Styles make matchups, right? Well, this is what we want to see. Bama, the revenge factor at home, I think you can kind of take that into account a little bit. I think you can kind of factor that in just a little bit, the fact that it is at home. Couple areas that I have jotted down here in my notes that I'd like to go over in this football game is Oklahoma's turnover margin's a -5. Bama's +10. Advantage Alabama. Oklahoma's going to have to play mistake-free. Another one. Penalties. Oklahoma, 109th in the country in penalty yards a game. Bama sits at 25th. So advantage Bama in that regard. Oklahoma's defense, if there's any area that I can say that might be a problem, is going to be their red zone defense. Red area, 84.2% of the time, their opponents are scoring. And then Alabama's red zone offense, one of the best in the country, 92.1% of red zone trips, they're scoring. So that's an area of concern for Oklahoma. Time of possession, these teams are about, Oklahoma holds the ball on average about 30 minutes a game. So Alabama's at 32. So not too far off on that. But I think what it's going to come down to, I think, be who runs the football, who controls the clock better, who plays better defense. I like Alabama. I know a lot of people are picking Alabama to go to the national championship. I'm not one of those because I don't like how one-dimensional they are on offense. I think that's eventually going to be something that's going to bite them in the butt when they start to play a team that can defend the pass better. They haven't really played a defense that is a top, quote, defense at defending the pass. They played Georgia, but Georgia's pass defense wasn't great at that point in the season. Now they've gotten better, but they weren't good at that point in the season. So this will be a test for Bama. Anxious to see how they respond to this. So, prediction, and this is one where, there's some people trying to be different, going out there on a limb, saying Oklahoma's going to pull the upset in Tuscaloosa. I'm not one of those people. I've got Bama winning this football game 27-20 over Oklahoma in Tuscaloosa. Bama gets their little bit of a get back from last year's debacle in Norman. I think Ty Simpson's going to continue to be Ty Simpson. He plays very good at home. I mean, he plays good everywhere, but he's played really good at home this year so far. Very good numbers there. And then also you've got the full contingent of Bama wide receivers healthy for really the second week of the year. They were healthy last week. When you got guys like Horton and Brooks, Bernard and Williams there. I just think that Bama's got just a few more playmakers than Oklahoma, and I think that's the difference in the football game. Bama rolls 27-20. Not really rolls, but touchdown win, for Alabama as they continue their march to Atlanta, the SEC championship game. All right, last game, and after the whistles, game of the week this week is going to be the Texas Longhorns going on the road, night game in Athens, playing the Georgia Bulldogs. So like we say about revenge spots, we say Alabama's getting their little revenge spot, against Oklahoma, potentially. Texas, is this a revenge spot for Texas? Frying pan to the face 2 times last year to this Georgia Bulldogs team. One time in your house. A two-score win for Georgia in your house. Like I said, frying pan to the face. Atlanta, you go up, you let the backup quarterback come back and beat you, frying pan to the face again. Couple areas that I'd like to note here for this Texas defense. 1, second-ranked rush defense in the country. I have it circled right here in my notes. I have it written out. That is an area where it is strength on strength. Georgia's offense really has started to turn the corner running the football. They're a lot better running the football this year than they were last year. We can all remember that. This Georgia team struggled last year running the football. They've gotten a lot better this year in that category. But it's going to be good on good here. A run game that just ran for 300 yards last week against Mississippi State. Nate Frazier having 12 carries, 181 yards, kind of his breakout game last week. But completely different monster here in the Texas defense with the ability that they have to stop the run. Now, passing, it's a defense that has been giving up a lot of yards this year on that front. 96th in the country in that regard, giving up 235 yards passing. So I feel like there's two different ways this game can go. Either one, Georgia comes out and runs the football very well, controls the clock, keeps Texas's offense off the field, and we turn it into a good old-fashioned just slugfest. Or I feel like this game could potentially turn into a little bit of a shootout. And hear me out. Because of the fact that neither of these teams, now I will say, I said it a minute ago, Georgia's pass defense has gotten better as the season's gone on. But Texas's pass defense is terrible. I mean, this was a lot better unit in that regard last year against the pass. When they had some guys go to the league, I get it. But, you know, if there's anywhere that you can exploit this Texas defense, it's in the pass game. Now, the ability for guys like Anthony Hill to rush the passer and to disrupt timing of the quarterback kind of helps them out on that front a little bit, because, you know, there's nothing that helps a vulnerable secondary better than a pass rush. So that's an area to me where, could that happen? Could they get enough pressure on Gunnar Stockton to force some errant throws, force some turnovers? It's an area where Georgia's kind of struggled, not really struggled this year. They don't give up the ball a lot. They just don't take it away a lot. That's been the issue with them, but they're sitting at a -2 turnover margin, whereas Texas is +8. So Texas is going to try to take the football, and they don't give it up. So Texas also, what's up with all the, did I pick like the penalty? I don't know. Did I pick the highest penalized teams in the country to go over? Because Texas is 117th. That's another area to me where Texas, that's a spot. Kirby Smart's teams are always disciplined, you know, for the most part. They don't commit a whole lot of penalties. They're top 30 in the country in that regard. They don't commit a whole lot of penalties. Texas does. So Texas's issue is going to be giving up, the penalty yards a game. Or not giving up, committing the penalty yards per game. Red zone offense, not good in that area either. You know, Georgia's red zone defense versus Texas's red zone offense is probably going to be the key area, one of the key areas that I'm going to be zoned in on. Is Georgia's statistically this year been a really good defense in that red area. Now, they're a good defense, but it seems like when teams cross into that red area, they buckle down. They tighten the chin straps. You know, they get after it. It's like they understand, hey, we got to keep them away from that. It's almost like the end zone enters their peripheral vision, and they're like, oh man, we gotta stop them from getting in there, or we're gonna give up some points. So, yes, I know about Arch Manning. You know, I know about, he's getting better, seems like, with every passing week. I feel like he has improved. You know, when we watched the game against Vanderbilt, we watched him kind of come into his own a little bit there, to where he looked a lot better. 25 of 33, 328 yards passing there. He just kind of not emerged, but that's the Arch Manning that they told us was going to be here, before the season started. Guys like Paul Feinbaum, who was calling him the best quarterback prospect we've seen since Tim Tebow, which turned out to be a, terrible talking point. Paul Feinbaum's had a lot of those this year. Oh well. But starting to play some better football is Arch Manning. So this to me is either going to be kind of Arch is on that upward arc. See what I did there? Or he's kind of just, like maybe the Vanderbilt game was a little bit, not fluky, but maybe it was just a little bit like maybe Vanderbilt wasn't as good defensively as we thought, and Texas was able to just really just have their way with Vanderbilt's defense. Who knows? But I think it's going to come down to, this game's going to come down to three key areas. It's going to come down to quarterback play. Who's going to play better at that position? Is it going to be Gunnar or is it going to be Arch? That's the two, that's the two areas. Because statistically, these guys are not far apart. When you have the, Gunner with 2,035 yards, Arch with 2,123, Gunner with 15 touchdowns, Arch with 18, Gunner with 2 interceptions, Arch has 6. So that's the area there we have to focus on. Gunner completing almost 70% of his passes, Arch at about 63%. So to me, it comes down to quarterback play. And also, Texas has not been able to run the football this year. So whoever runs the football better is going to win this football game argument, to me, is not really one that we are going to get into here, because Texas just can't run the football. They haven't been a running football team this year. They're more or less reliant on the passing game, the quarterback run, more or less, just to keep the defense honest. I think sometimes Arch is just back there. He's a running threat. He's not going to run because they haven't been a very good running team. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, whoever runs the football better is going to win. I think whatever team controls the clock and performs better in the red zone is going to win this football game. Right now, Georgia's top 10 in the country in both of those areas, and better than Texas in those areas. It's in Athens. It's at night. So I'm not picking y'all know me. I'm not picking against Georgia. I think we see a pretty good football game. I'm not thinking that this is going to be a Georgia-Mississippi State type deal that we're going to see in Athens this weekend. But I do think that Georgia beats Texas comfortably. And by comfortably, I mean Georgia covers the 5.5-point spread. Georgia wins this game by a touchdown. And I'm calling Georgia 28, Texas 21 is what I'm going to call in this football game. I think this game is going to be interesting into the second half. It might even be a tie game at halftime. Who knows? It might be 14-14 at halftime, whatever. But I do believe that UGA gets it done and gets it done in the end. This is the last conference game for Georgia. So this is positioning for the postseason by way of the conference. I mean, this is the last SEC game, so Georgia could snake their way into that SEC championship discussion. They win here, no more conference games. Texas A&M still has conference games. Bama still has conference games. You never know what could happen. It is college football. Crazier things have happened. I mean, they've already happened this year. So this could be big for Georgia to get a win as far as the SEC championship picture. If obviously Georgia wants to play in it. Obviously Kirby wants to play in it. So this is your chance to go ahead and put your name in the hat, so to speak. All right. Fun weekend. Not a whole lot of big-time matchups, but I like it because I can pay closer attention to the matchups that I got. I can pay closer attention to the 4 or 5 matchups that, are featuring ranked teams. This upcoming weekend, we're coming to a point where we're coming in for the landing. We're coming down, and it is week 12. So college football season coming to a close here pretty soon, or the regular season anyway, and then we're jockeying for position into that postseason, into the college football playoff race. So, like I said, a lot of fun storylines this weekend. Not so many big games. It's not really a full slate, but still gonna be sitting around, still gonna be watching football, still gonna be enjoying my time in front of the television watching these football games. I know I'll be glued in. Hope you are too. Once again, follow me on the social media channels. I plugged them earlier in the episode. If you didn't hear that for some reason, if you just skipped the intro completely, at ATWCFB on Instagram and Facebook. You can listen to the show on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. Be sure to find me there. Be sure to leave a rating. Be sure to subscribe to the show. Follow the show wherever you listen to it at. Be sure to do those two things, because it is a problem that I have more listeners than I have followers and subscribers. So be sure to do that. If you listen to the show, subscribe to the show. So that's all I ask of you. Hey, y'all have a good rest of your week. Have a good weekend. Enjoy football. I'll catch y'all on Monday as we wrap up Week 12's action. Catch y'all later. This has been After the Whistle. See y'all.